Welcome to the Books Applied podcast, presented by WSL Leadership. In this podcast, we talk about an awesome book and how to apply it to your work, sport, or life. I'm your host, Iggy Perillo. Thanks for joining me. On today's episode, we're talking about the book Unreasonable Hospitality by Will Guidara. And joining me is my special guest, Effy. Effy, can you introduce yourself to the listeners out there?
Hello, everybody. I'm Effy. I know Iggy through roller derby. We met so many years ago now, it feels like. But yeah, just know each other through derby, but I'm a big fan of reading. And I love this book so much.
Fantastic. One of the reasons I had seen this book sort of out there in the world, and I saw you post somewhere how much you loved it. So I'm like, oh, I should move it up to the stack and read it because I knew you liked it. Do you remember how you found this book or how it came to you? I feel like it had a very popular, kind of public moment, but I'm curious.
Totally. Yeah. I was watching The Bear on Hulu, as one does, as so many of us were doing. And one of my favorite episodes, potential spoilers for people who haven't seen it, is in Richie's episode when he goes to work at this restaurant that his cousin worked at, who just had this really, so well-known, amazing chef and just impeccable service. And there's Richie's character originally is somebody who's just cranky at life and cranky at a lot of things. And then it's his big character arc redemption story sort of in a way, or him becoming a new different version of himself. And he learns about not necessarily the importance of hospitality, but just what it can mean to people. And there's a montage scene, which I love a montage scene always, where there's just a short clip and he's reading a book and it kind of shows the cover. And I was watching it and I love reading. And so I was just curious if the book was a real book. So I looked it up. It sounded super interesting. And so I ordered it at a bookstore. I read it and I just felt so seen, which feels really funny, reading this book. But we can get a little bit more into that later, potentially. But yeah, I saw it was featured briefly in The Bear. And I'm pretty sure that a lot of elements of that episode were actually based off of parts that happened in the book. So yeah, that's how I found it. And then it was really funny. And then I started seeing it kind of everywhere. And in thrift stores, people, I think, had done the same thing if they had seen it probably on the TV show, read it, and then moved on from it. But
I think I heard, this may be conjecture, but I thought I heard that Will Guidara actually did some consulting with The Bear in producing
that would not surprise me at all.
Not that episode, but perhaps other things to bring sort of his restaurant expertise to the fictional restaurant of environment.
Absolutely, yeah, I completely believe that.
Cool.
Yes.
I've never watched The Bear, but I hear about it from time to time. I was most recently when I was in Chicago, I was at meeting with friends at a place this is where the cake from The Bear is based on. Everywhere in Chicago has the cake or the,
Yeah.
That's cool. It was great show. Cake, by the way. It was lovely.
Yeah. Great show. Just prepared to be very stressed when you watch it. So.
Okay. I'll keep that in mind.
It's got a time and place.
I am curious to hear from you. We both work in worlds that would not be traditionally called the hospitality industry. We're not traditionally, I'm not in the restaurant space or, those kind of spaces. I know you're not either. What from this book really spoke to you though? I mean, I think we both have mentioned that we liked this book, but what of it, do you think applies or what came out, what stuck out to you when you were reading this?
So I work in a pet store and I've worked there. This will be year 15 for me. Of being there. And I mean, obviously, I think that anybody probably stays, if anyone's staying in a place that long, it means that they care about something, some element of it, something about it resonates with them. And I think that it's a customer service job,
right.
Yeah, which is in a version of hospitality for sure. And I think that is just a part of it. And especially too in the world of pets, people come in and it's not that they're just shopping for clothes or something for them. It's and especially in Portland, pets are people's babies. And so it's a very classic experience is like a person comes in and they have this new pet that they've adopted, or like a puppy or a kitten, and like they want you to fawn over them. They want you to be like, that is the cutest animal I've ever seen in my life. And sometimes it's not. Um, like
Yeah.
sometimes I'm just like, okay, great. Like,
Spoiler, sometimes people have ugly pets. This is
ugly
like
pets, or like,
drop some truth.
yeah, and like, I hate to say it, but like I've seen a lot of doodle puppies in the last couple of years, and so like you get a little bit jaded there,
Sure.
like sort of any industry in any job. But like that's not what people are coming in for. They're not coming in for me to be like, oh cool, whatever, like they want to be fawned over. They want to hear how cute their pet is. They want us to like people get so excited when we like remember their pets' names, when we like light up when we see them. And so like I think that connects to like the hospitality industry in a lot of ways. Of it's like at the end of the day, it is like customer service and like a little bit of acting.
Sure.
Yeah.
And I think the interesting part of this book is he tries to describe how he systematizes that in a way, like basically systematizing creativity, because I think he fundamentally describes it as a very creative and very personal act. Like whoever walks in, like whatever client walks in your door, or person walks into his restaurant, like they want to be treated as a unique, special individual. And you have to be a little bit creative because every person is different, and every, every pet is different that walks in the door at your place, every pet owner. So you have to be creative, but he also wants it to happen all the time, right?
Yes.
Like he's not like, yeah, you should be like sort of unreasonable hospitality, like is really this over the top kind of hospitality vibe. He's like, that's great, but you have to do it all the time for everybody, pretty much, which I thought was kind of interesting. Like, oh, we're not just here to suck up to the A-list, VIP clients. We're here to like really make everyone feel really, welcomed, seen, present, like engaged with, like human. I think there's just really the hospitality industry, the air quotey version of that is seen as really transactional, I think often. And I think he moves it away from that transactional space in really interesting, really detailed ways.
Totally. And I think that he like highlights this in the book when he talks about like, I think it's like a group of, or like a couple and their teachers, and they've like saved up like all year, and like, especially in those moments is like when you want to go above and beyond for those people, and in like my industry, that looks like, sometimes people who are like, I just adopted this like senior dog who, was being and like, this is like extreme and sad and tragic, but it's like, who are like, this dog who's had like a really difficult life and like maybe didn't have like the best past. And like, both for those people and for this animal, you're just like, it kind of like reinvigorates you to like want to do that above and beyond. And it's, even though, so much of it is like, a customer is a customer sort of at the end of the day. But it's like this customer who comes in with this experience is so different from, someone who comes in and like, this is just another day that ends in Y for them. It's not as special, but you have to like be ready for both experiences for sure.
And I think he does this well in that he doesn't make his staff are also humans and part of this equation. Like he really is into exceptionally supporting his staff so they can be really like deliver this unreasonable hospitality to their patrons, their clients, their people that come in the door. And so I think there's this other side where you're like, oh, cool. So you expect everyone to go above and beyond. That just means you're, under supporting your people, right? I think there's this mentality, the most capitalist mentality of hospitality is like, you're expected to go above and beyond, but I'm only going to support you to go, to the limit. Above and beyond is expected, but not supported. And he, I think, talks really well about how to actually support his people to be present and to make things exceptional for the people that walk in.
Totally. I think it was really interesting, like when I was reading it and comparing it to like not only the industry, but the specific space that I work in versus his, where, his is this like luxury high end. So of course the expectations in terms of like what the customer is expecting is going to differ a little bit than if he was in like a fast casual setting or like fast food. And I think the sort of advantage that he has is that the people who are applying for those jobs and interested in his specific space, like you're going to get similar minded people, whereas like something that I sort of struggled with when I was reading this book, I was like so inspired to do all these things. But I mean, a big part of it is that like you need buy-in from your coworkers, you need buy-in from the people who work for you. And like for me, my boss treats us very well. And I think we're all very happy to be there for sure. But at the end of the day, it's a pet store. It's a pet supply store. I think it's for a lot of people a stepping stone to like what might not even like their career is coming next, but it's like just another kind of like stepping stone job. And so like, to expect unreasonable hospitality from people in this setting looks very different because like it's an hourly job. People are clocking in, they're clocking out, they're not taking work home with them. And so like that buy-in looks really different from what I'm experiencing versus, somebody who is in a like, I don't know, like a grade A hospitality sort of position.
Yeah. I think the distinction you're making a little bit is between like, this is a career. My career is to be like, there's like a wait staff and you're like, well, that doesn't sound like like that just sounds like a summer job or, whatever, a stepping stone job, like you were saying. And I think at the level that he's working at, these are careers, like you are like the wine steward, like that is a career, right? Out there.
And you're going to do that long term.
Yeah, exactly. And he also talks about this, like he creates this job role. I forget what he calls it, but basically it's like the creativity department. So he like basically has people assigned to make and do amazing things for the customers that come in. And that's like a whole job in itself. So it's not like, hey, every staff member here needs to be alert and be aware, but aren't expected to deliver on everything all by themselves. They have this whole other behind the scenes workshop. He talks about the workshop that they have where they can build things and create things and personalize things and really make things ideal for that individual client. So like there's like this level of back end support that most of us don't have at our day job, where we're like, we're expected to deliver, but it has to come from us as people to like deliver that level of connection and that level of human interaction without literally a workshop behind us that's gonna fuel and research and like it sounds like I've never eaten at 11 Madison Park, which is his place, but it's like you don't just call up and get a reservation. It sounds like there's
they
this
know you're coming.
Conversation. It's done in a way to not feel like an interview, but my impression is like you get interviewed and you get like, they get a lot of information from you, even at the reservation stage. So when you walk in the door, he described this changing the normal sort of reservation mode. Like there's not a iPad there that they're looking at, like that's all moved. So there's just a person there who can greet you by name because they've studied your face. They know when you're coming in.
They lurk like your social media.
Yeah, exactly. He talks about like doing some social media stalking. So when you walk in the door, they can greet you by name, and they know why you're there. They know more about you than maybe you even said. But I think there's also intention during the process. Like you tell them, obviously as a person, like you're coming or why or this, like there's stuff like that. But they then just keep digging into that information.
Yeah, whereas like I feel like both you and I, we deal with a lot of like we are learning in the moment about these people and like their experiences, and like you have to just work with that. There's no other like prep time for it.
Yeah, barely. Like I get a name sometimes, a name and an email. I'm like, great. I wonder what they're talking. The closest I have is my sign up form for meetings where it's like, what do you want to talk about? So at least I get some hint of what they want to talk about often. Or there are people I've talked to in other contexts. But it is. I don't social media stalk people, or very lightly. If they list a website, I'm like, great, I'll look at your website.
Great,
cool. Perfect. Like that.
I had sort of my own experience of this. Last year, I stayed at the Disneyland Hotel.
Oh yeah.
Time. It was okay. It was kind of a sad reason. I was going for a friend's like memorial service in the area, and it was kind of like a bucket list item for us to like stay at this, just like spend a silly amount of money. But I took an Uber there, and my Uber pulled up, and they like, because you have to pay for parking and stuff at these places, and they asked, and the person was like, oh, she has a reservation, I'm just dropping her off. And they just asked for my name on the reservation, and I gave it to them because I was like, they're making sure that we're not lying. And so we pull up, and like a valet person opens the door for me, and they obviously like looked at the ticket. I gave them my name, but they opened the door, and he said, hi, Miss Valadez, welcome home. And I was just like, just like so overwhelmed. And it was one of those things where I feel like you can kind of equate it to like a psychic, where I'm like, of course they know my name. I told them my name.
Yeah,
But just
there's
like,
not a mystery here, right?
yeah, but
But then
like
they use it, they deliver on it. Like it's used in a
and
way that is like intentionally welcoming you in, right?
yes, yeah. And it's, yeah, just like little moments like that where it's like you just feel so special.
Hmm.
You pay a lot of money to feel so special. But
Right, right.
yeah.
But I think that doesn't change how it feels, right? To
Yeah,
be
no, not at all.
recognized and to be like
Hmm.
greeted in that way, and to have people, yeah, to have people know, and like
Yeah.
that there's like a lot of intentionality around that. And I've
Hmm.
heard a lot about the training of people at Disney, which is an interesting
Hmm.
hospitality vibe that like I
Yeah.
think I've visited the parks and things, and basically I've been told that they have to like they have sometimes often someone told me a story once that they were at one of the Disney parks, and they were trying to get from here to there or whatever, and their rental car didn't come through, so they're kind of stuck at this hotel and they needed to get someplace. And the person at the desk was like, "Oh, cool, you can borrow my car." And he's like, what are you talking about? I'm going to borrow your car, right? It's like totally ridiculous, right? He's like, "Oh, well, our job is to like make, essentially," he pulled this little card out of his pocket. It was like, "Make the people happy
Yeah.
above
Big
first." And
magic. Yeah.
yeah, and then like follow the rules was like second, a little bit, or this kind of vibe. And
Yeah.
so like that idea that it's not just like, yeah, we just say go do your best, like we like support people. And the in the book he talks about these legends, and so doing these like super legendary
Yeah.
acts of hospitality,
Hmm.
and then encouraging other people to sort of do these things. And the stories are kind of like, they sound a little weird, like the people that have been on this food tour of New York, and they're leaving, they're there with their luggage, they're flying out the next day, and they're like, "Oh, the only thing we haven't had is a dirty water hot dog from a street vendor."
Yeah.
So he like runs out and gets a hot dog from the street vendor, then makes his chef like plate it, and the chef's like,
Yeah.
you can just kind of see the chef a little bit like, "Oh, come
Right.
on, okay,
Yeah.
whatever." But like slices up this hot dog, makes a little mustard garnish or whatever, and the people are elated that they got this like
Hmm.
$3 hot dog from like
Yeah.
the vendor on the street, but like served to them as one of the courses of this, a very elaborate meal. And they rave about it, right? Like it's
Yeah.
not that it was like a great hot dog or whatever, but the experience of being offered
Totally.
this thing
Yeah.
made that experience amazing for them. And so
Mhm.
they have all these sort of stories of other sort of he calls them legends, and like I always want to put like legendary prank, but they're not pranks. They're just ways to
Right.
like engage people.
Yeah.
Like apparently, this friend of mine who got the hotel staff to lend them a car, to get to wherever, which is like okay. But I think there are places where that's supported and elevated, and so
Yeah.
he talks about how important it is to share those stories. So like we need to share the stories of how we're doing things for people in unique ways. And I think one of the things he talks about also is back like trying to figure out how people got there so they can pay the meter for them, right? If you're
Yeah.
paying at the meter, and they would like
Yeah.
run out and pay the meter. Like I don't know how you would do that here where we are in Portland, because it's all like
Yeah.
online and it's on your phone and weird
Yeah.
stuff.
That's
But
true. Yeah.
I think there are like things like that are subtle but also meaningful. Like, oh, I need to
Yeah.
go pay the meter. Like, no, we've already taken care of it for you.
Yeah,
Like whatever.
absolutely.
They do those kind
Mhm.
of things.
Yeah. It's really funny because like after I read this book and I was reading some of these instances to some of my friends, I think you very quickly find who is like similarly minded to you, and like there are two camps of either like what an amazing performance of hospitality, like how thoughtful, how just like big picture thinking, and then you get other people who are a lot of my friends being like, that's creepy, like how
Oh,
did they do that, and whereas I'm just like, I'm just like, oh my god, amazing hospitality, like 5 stars, whereas
yeah.
I think other people feel a little bit differently about some of it, but I mean, I am gung-ho for it. I am
Yeah.
so ready for it.
Well, I think it's a little bit rare in our daily life. I
Yeah.
would say, broadly speaking, like I'm not at a like a 3-star Michelin restaurant. Never have I been at one,
Yeah.
and that's not really what I expect when just walking down the street, or heading to my library or heading whatever. But when the person at the library was like, "Hey, how are you doing, Iggy?" I'm like, "Oh, they know me, right?"
Yeah.
Like just even like these like little tiny
small
pieces.
versions of that. Yeah.
Absolutely. I think that is funny. I think there are people, like I've talked about, like how to show appreciation a lot. It's like this piece of my work, because he actually talks about in this book. He's like, if you can't appreciate people more often than you criticize them, that's a failure of leadership, is kind of one of his concepts. Like, so if you are just there dropping criticism constantly, like you were failing as a leader, which I agree with for sure. And we lose track because we're like, oh, we need to focus on fixing problems, or we need to focus on getting this done, or task, or whatever.
Definitely.
But the idea that like how we show appreciation to people needs to be tailored to the person. And so I know there are people out there who are like, acts of service is like a high, like really feels like appreciation to them. And like anything out there are people who are like, oh, if you just tell me you appreciate me, like talk is cheap, whatever. That's meaningless, right? There's people on kind of all these different ends of the spectrum. And this idea of hospitality is really about service and providing service, acts of service for people. And some people that really resonates with. And I think there are people out there that are like, yeah, this is creepy, or I don't trust you, or
what do I need to give like in return for this?
Yeah. Like, what are you setting me up for? Like there's kind of some of that, which that happens. And it's also, I think more people than not are actually like to make other people happy, generally speaking. Like, I think they're out there in the world, most likely, most people are, need to take care of themselves, but are here to like make sure it's not too tough on the people around them.
Right.
To some degree. So I don't know that that's such a stretch to assume, oh, when I go into a very specific environment where hospitality is a prime feature of this space, that people are over the top or excited, like really invested in that. It seems sensical to me, I guess.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's definitely like, it is like, this book I feel like is the varsity version, it is the Olympic sport, gold medal winning version of people pleasing and acts of service. Yeah. And like, I mean, there's a quote I literally like was about to be like, yeah, this Maya Angelou quote. And I'm like, oh, I literally read that in this book of this concept of like, you're not going to remember what someone said or what they did, but you're always going to remember how they made you feel. And like, what a perfect way to encapsulate that. And like, I feel like that even put words to like so many other experiences I've had in my life that I like didn't necessarily know how I could like describe it to people. But like, I mean, yeah, you're always going to remember, like, I don't remember what I ate at that restaurant. I don't remember how much it cost. But like, oh my God, they took such good care of me,
Yeah.
And they were so kind and thoughtful. Like that goes so much further than I think people sometimes realize or remember.
Yeah. I think that there's also this part about like, we don't always appreciate the impact we have on other people. And even like, and when we're not in this extreme hospitality environment or unreasonable hospitality environment, like the smaller acts of being engaging and like treating people well still have a big impact on people. Everything doesn't have to be like this crazy, event where we, build a custom, he talks about this one story about turning the restaurant into like a beach with like sand and like palm trees. I'm like, that's a lot, right? for people coming in. We don't always have to be quite so over the top, but we can engage with people in a way that recognizes their humanity, but also elevates people and makes them feel good without, like, it's not very expensive. It's not very time consuming. It doesn't have to be elaborate, but it can have a huge impact on folks.
Definitely.
Are there other parts of this book that stuck out to you? I've had this like list of quotes on my my brain that I'm like, oh yeah, this and this and this, but I'm curious to hear from you if there are parts of it that, what stuck out. I
mean, it's like, it's interesting. So it's been a minute since I've read it. And part of me was like, oh, I should like skim it again, but I didn't really have time. But it is like really wild. Like, I feel like I still like so much of it has stuck with me and I can remember so much of it. I mean, like I am constantly thinking about that story of like one of their like, the legends of like going to the person's house because the couple realized that like they left champagne in like the freezer or something like that, or the fridge somewhere, and it was going to go like terribly, terribly awry. But like, no, I don't know. It just like, I felt like reading this book, it's so silly, but I was like, oh, there are other insane people out there in the world who like, this is like fun for them. And I think it's an element of it that I really enjoyed about the book was that like something that I felt like about myself that I've like never really wanted to admit to people, or like, I feel like guilty for saying it, but I'm like, I like working, like I enjoy work. I feel like as a kid, I loved, like playing like store or like these kind of like silly, like transactional things, or just like things that I think now, and I mean, very rightfully so, I feel like as adults, especially in Portland, we spend a lot of time of, critiquing critiquing capitalism, critiquing, don't do anything unless you're being compensated for it. And like almost, and also too, there's like that, I think it was like a tweet or something of like, what's your dream job? And it's like, I don't dream of working,
Yeah,
those things.
I love it. Yeah.
But like,
I don't dream of labor, I think.
yeah, I don't dream of labor, but
I love
like,
it.
also too, like, I'm really good at working retail, like I have few talents in this world, but like God,
False.
but God knows that like I can, make small talk with the customer and schmooze them and like make something happen efficiently and like make someone happy and then send them on their way. So, I think really it was just like validating to read this book and be like, oh, like it's okay to enjoy elements of work, which even as I'm saying it sounds like really ridiculous, but I think that it speaks to something bigger than that. And it's like, yeah, why do I enjoy working? Like what I enjoy sometimes the monotony of it, but also, yeah, too, when you think of like customer service aspects, like it feels so good to help somebody. And especially like in my line of work, we deal a lot with people coming into us, with not fun experiences of being like, my dog is not feeling well, my cat is barfing, or just like they're not doing well, like they don't feel good. How can you help me fix this? And like, I don't know, it's just really great when a customer comes back in and they're able to be like, oh my gosh, they're doing so much better. And I mean, I'm really like lucky even to say this, but it's like people come in and they're like, you helped me so much. Thank you so much. And I'm like, I have no idea who you are. And it's like, yeah, because there's an element of like, I mean, face blindness, but also just like, I have to do this every day. And like, of course I'm not going to remember everyone, but like, man, how cool is it that like, I'm potentially doing this so often that like I don't even remember all the people that I'm helping, and like not only making their lives better, but like helping this animal that now lives at this person's house and who knows how to got there. And just like that funny concept too of just animals being, I don't know, they're not like helpless in a way, but yeah, it's just kind of like we chose to be in charge of them, so like let's do our duty of doing the best that we can.
Yeah, they're dependent for sure.
Yeah.
Most of us, if we have pets, they are definitely dependent on us for so many things. I think what you're saying makes me think of this quote from the book. Like, yes, we embrace anti-capitalism for sure, and also recognize we operate in this land of commerce where money changes hands and money pays bills and bills get, all these different things. And he talks about, one of his quotes is, run toward what you want instead of running away from what you don't want. And I think there's a way to, like, to me, that speaks of like embracing the parts of what you do that you enjoy or that you love, and also creating the world that you want to create. If we had put our energy toward that versus thinking about like running away from things or avoiding things or, quashing things that are going on around us, we actually make more progress. Like this idea of fleeing versus like charging towards something. And I think that is like these sort of, one of the things I liked about this book are these little mentality shifts of like, oh yeah, if I'm, I talk with folks that are struggling with things too, not pets necessarily, but other challenges in their organizations often. Like, cool, yeah, all of that's happening. That sucks. That's terrible. And what do you want to have happen? Like where, like part of, I think my work is redirecting people toward this future. Like, and I think your people walk in with like, I want a pet that isn't throwing up. And you're like, got it. It's pretty clear what they want. But to get people, I think when it's not quite so, straightforward, it takes a second for people to sort of get their brain around articulating what they want this to look like, what they want to move toward, because so much of their energy, if the person is just like cleaning up puke all day, like they don't have a lot of capacity to think about like, well, imagine if this wasn't happening and how do we get there? But those pieces are important to like head toward what we want, where we want to go in the future.
Yeah. And like on that note too of like, I think that this is something that we're so blessed to have in Portland, but like you also like are mostly going to find these things at small businesses and like independent owned businesses. And so, it's like, yes, while we are in this mode of like capitalism and and commerce, but but this is also a really great way to like uplift small businesses, independently owned places that like are really owned by the people in our community. And like I feel like those are always the places too that I get the person who's going to go, like that's what makes them different. Like that's where you're going to get someone who's going above and beyond, who like really has more specialized knowledge. I don't know. Yeah.
Or they're just invested differently because they're present. Like the people are attached to the community as well as attached to the service they're providing, or, whatever they're selling or doing there. Absolutely. I think that does come out by, sometimes by chance a little bit, the right person you found the retail job. You're like, yeah, I like retail. Like, it's okay. Like, great. Embrace it.
Gotta do it.
Fantastic. And versus other people who are like, oh my gosh, if I have to talk to the folks that are, if they have 5 conversations in a day, they're like tapped out. They're like, I cannot, I don't have the energy for another person walking in being like, hey, where's the same question the previous 5 people asked. And you're like, okay, like, yeah, that doesn't work for everyone, right? Or and there's training and there's support and there's building skills. All of that is definitely true. But I think the idea of finding the right person in the right place, doing the right thing, like alchemizes the possibilities of what happens when you walk in there.
Yeah, definitely.
Another thing I would love from this book, I don't know if you remember this part, he talks about, he has this phrase, make the generous assumption, which I liked a lot because I hear from people often they say, assume positive intent. And I feel like this is the counterbalance from assuming positive intent. And I have a whole tangent of like what's problematic about assuming positive intent. But I really like the idea of like making the generous assumption, which means assuming people are kind of doing the best they can is one kind of way this looks out. We look at people and we're like, oh, and this, he talks about people in terms of the hospitality, they come in, they're kind of grumpy and cranky. And so the generous assumption is like, oh, maybe they had a bad day. I should really elevate, what I'm doing for them because they're already in a crappy mood versus, oh, they're in a crappy mood. I just assume they hate me. I'm out, like whatever. And so, go ahead.
No, I mean, I think it's like also too, like, is that not a healthy outlook for just living life in general? Like the kind of classic, like you'll catch more flies, what is it, with honey, sort of thing. But yeah, I don't know. I think it's so difficult, and it's like, I feel like now, especially in this, post-COVID / still COVID era, where people just change, like I think a lot of folks in, because when was this book written? When did it come out?
2022, I think.
Okay, yeah. I think that especially too is like such an interesting thing to keep in mind now, because I think that there was like a huge shift after stores reopened after COVID of like customers were wild and out, and like I feel like we've noticed that like people are difficult in different ways now.
How so? I'm curious at what you've noticed. I'm a little distant from the people walking in the door world.
Totally, yeah. I don't know. I feel like both as a customer and as a service worker, like I feel like there's like more difficulty of how to talk to people. Like I feel like people don't know like how to ask questions or like engage in conversation with another person anymore. That's a very vague description. But it's like I get people and it's like they just want to get to the point. Like they don't necessarily, or like even I think that they forget that they're like, I am a human being person in front of them with like, my own hopes and dreams, but also like my own crap going on and like my own pets puking at home, too. And I think it became like everyone's become very individualistic in a way, which I think is something that as a society in the US we've already know and recognize a little bit. It's like kind of an out for themselves sort of thing. But I think people just kind of realize it's like we're all working a little too hard for maybe not enough in return. And so I think that for me, it's something that we've had this conversation at work is that I'm rambling a little bit, is that service workers have just kind of gotten tired of doing the above and beyond, and then customers receive that experience and then they're like, well, they treated me like crap here, so why am I going to treat them nice back? And it's this like really frustrating cycle that we've like put ourselves into. And like, wouldn't that all be solved, or at least just broken up with this idea of like, make the generous assumption? I forget what I was talking about exactly at the beginning of this.
That's great though. But yeah, making the generous assumption means like how we just approach people in general. Like we don't have
Yeah.
to just wait for some special occasion to be like, oh, let's assume that they had a hard time, that's why they're cranky, or let's
Yeah.
just, he talks about it really as engaging with like the person first before the problem a little bit. And
Mm-hmm.
so, he talks about someone showing up late and he's like, hey, how are you doing? Is everything okay? Versus
Yeah.
showing up and be like, dude, you're late,
Yeah.
like those two different things.
Yeah. And I think it's one of those things where, because that cycle of like, I'm frustrated that you're acting this way, so I'm going to act the same way back to you. Like, we've become so used to that and like almost complicit in it that like it's harder to like do the opposite and make that generous assumption. Yeah, and I feel like it's not in our muscle memory.
Mm-hmm.
But like, man, to do it or like to have it done to you, like, I mean, I feel like you see it at every level of just like, a customer who's having a bad day, and if you're just like, hey, like, I'd really love to help, like, let's get this problem solved, or like, I feel like you see it on like really like angry political videos of people just being like, hey, like, let's humanize each other a little bit.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And it works on so many levels. And yeah, just that, like, whole kindness thing sure works out sometimes. Who
Yeah.
knew?
Well, it's kindness, but it's also spoken, right? I think there's
Mhm.
this idea that like a quote I love is silent gratitude isn't much good to anybody at all.
Mhm.
Oh yeah, I appreciate them, or I'm grateful for them, or I'm whatever. I'm like, tell them,
Yeah.
and also like it's okay to tell people you care too. I think, and like fundamentally, that's what it comes down to: telling people like, oh, I care about you as a person, not just you as a dollar bill that walked in the door to,
Yeah.
buy this, or
Yeah.
as a piece of it, half a transaction that we're going to do,
Yeah. Mhm.
that there's, this human or this person or, a person behind the ideas or behind the, the behavior that you see out there. And I think that's why I like the making the generous assumption, like, which really just means like, let's just assume they're a person. And you're like, revolutionary,
Yeah.
shocking. Are there any other parts of this book that stuck out to you? Those were my favorite couple of quotes, but is there
Yeah.
anything else that sticks out in your mind?
Oh man, I mean, really, like, yeah, that like Maya Angelou quote,
Hmm.
I feel like I feel like I am, like, I literally, it makes me speechless, like, I feel like I hear that and I just like stared at a wall for the next 2 days, because I was like, oh my God, just like these things that are so, so simple, and like everyone has that experience, of remembering like, my very silly example is that like somebody that I knew long ago, through roller derby, who was a very close friend of mine, and we had a falling out, and I was talking about them recently, and I was even just like, I don't even remember what happened, but I just know that I
Mm-hmm.
don't like her anymore. And like moments like that of just like, I can like sort of touch on things of like why we had this falling out. um but yeah, it's just like, I am left with the way that this person made me feel, or the way that going to, even last week I was out of town for a work thing, and like, one of the vendors just like wouldn't give me the time of day, and I left, and like talking about this with my co-manager at work, I'm like, I don't even remember really what I wanted to talk to them about, or like what I was approaching them about, but like I just remember that like they seemed very irritated by the fact that I was there. Um yeah, and I mean, like, that I feel like is just something that I'm going to like carry with me for the rest of my life, and
Right.
it's one of those things too where I feel like it's such an important thing, and it's a thing that you also think about really, when you're like reflecting later,
Mm-hmm.
and it's
Mm-hmm.
something that I like really hope to remember in moments, especially too, as a person who like is going to continue working in the customer service industry, who is a manager at my job, and like I have to remember too, like, how do I make my coworkers feel, in these moments? Am I remembering to like praise them and give them compliments, as opposed to just like constantly critiquing, constantly, pointing out the downfalls,
Absolutely.
and yeah, it's so much bigger than what we realize sometimes.
Are there parts of this book that you feel like you're specifically applying? Like we've definitely talked about how this has influenced your work. Are there parts where you're like, oh yeah, now I'm doing this thing because I read this, or this is making me think about this in a new way?
Yeah, I mean, there was something like that I implemented at work, after reading this book, where like we started doing like private shopping appointments for reactive dogs, because they're just because they don't do well with other dogs doesn't mean that they can't have like a fun shopping experience. They deserve to have that like fun and stimulation to come in. And so I really started doing that. And then I would make like these little, like, cause it's also hard too, in my line of work, it's just like, what can you even do? And so I started making these like little goodie bags, like with their name on it, and like making sure that they didn't have any allergies, and just like, giving them an experience that for some other people and their pets is like so normalized. Like, we have regulars who come in every single day with their pet, with their dog when they're just on a walk. And like, but to some people, like, that's not even fathomable, to be able to bring their dog into a pet store and just like shop around and not just be like on edge the entire time. So yeah, just doing stuff like that. I think it's such an important book for anyone who's in like management or leadership to read. And I was really trying to get like everybody that I worked with to read it, and nobody would. But
they'll listen to this podcast. They'll be fine. They'll listen to this podcast. I know, right? Yeah. Then they'll go read it because they'll be so inspired. But that's
I know, right? Or honestly, too, like just watch that episode of The Bear. Like it encapsulates it too so well.
I have to go look that one up. That's great.
Yeah, man. There's a really good Taylor Swift use of music too in it. That's
great.
But I don't know. Yeah, it's just like, man. I mean, it builds you up. Like it's one of those ways of it. It is kind of crazy that it's like it helps. It obviously helps the customer. It gives them a good experience, but like, dang, like you feel so good about yourself afterwards. And like, it feels so good to know that you helped people and like gave them a good experience and made them happy. And like, it's so simple,
and so fulfilling.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Well, this has been awesome talking with you today about this book. I'm so glad I saw you excited about it so I could be motivated and then finally talk with you about it. So thanks so much for coming in. And it's been great having you here on the show.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. It's been so fun.
Thanks for joining us for this episode of the Books Applied podcast. I hope you enjoyed getting to know a new book and learning how to apply its ideas to make your work, sport, or life a little bit more awesome. For more leadership education-related content, including conflict management checklists, invitations to a fun free lunch that happens monthly, upcoming classes, webinars, and mastermind groups, please head over to wslleadership.com. Thanks, and have a great day.